So to begin, I'd love for everyone to go around and say their name and what brings them here today. So Stuart, I'm going to start with you.
So my name is Stuart Sandford. I'm the curator for the exhibition.
I'm Simon Haas, and I'm showing 2 drawings here.
My name is Durk Dehner, and I'm co-founder of the Tom of Finland Foundation, which is based here at the Tom House.
All right, I'm Dr. Evan Goldstein. This was kind of my idea of starting this, and then obviously with Stuart and the Tom of Finland House, we were able to make this happen.
I'm Ruben Esparza. I'm a LA-based artist and curator, founder of the Queer Biennial. I've been coming here for 25 years. Right, Dirk?
It's a long time.
It's a long time. Are you tired of him?
No.
Yes, he is.
So, Dr. Goldstein, what drew you to this this work, but also this project? It seems like a lot to put together with a doctor's schedule.
Yeah, I think it was just time in my career where everything started to kind of mesh together. I think we talked about a little bit about the beauty of the asshole and the butthole and kind of everything that I do, and it was just looking from an artistic perspective of how I approach it, how I know clients want the aesthetic side, but then I also wanted to marry the functional component to everything. And we don't necessarily see the trauma associated with anal sex, and it was me looking at it from a different lens of looking at desire, looking at form and function, and then obviously the aesthetic piece. And then I said, how can we kind of marry all of that to really instill in the community what I do, but then also taking it to the next level on an artistic perspective.
And what made you so passionate about butts? You know, a lot of what you've spoken about through this exhibition and through your own work is that you're taking care of your butt, and thinking of butts in a more complicated way is good for all of us, not just for sex, but thinking about stigma.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look back, it was HIV that was the huge component, and that was married to gay life. It was, if you're gay, you're HIV positive. And then I started to question and say, well, wait a second, where did that come from? And there's so much to gay life that has nothing to do with HIV, and who's providing the care just to live that life? And nobody was. Nobody really was looking at it in that way. And then I started to see repeat people coming in, and it was over and over, and the same injuries were happening over and over. And I started to say, well, who's actually studying it? Who's trying to look at preventative ways that we could approach the ass? And then also, who's taking care of the aesthetic part? Or I am mentally a bottom, but physically I can't function. It ruins relationships, it destroys egos. There's a psychosomatic and social component to it that is enormous. And I felt as if there's nobody in the world that's actually tackling those issues. And so yes, I take care of assholes all day, right? But it's more than that. I think it's kind of looking at a community and figuring out how can we better that. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do at Bespoke, and working with artists like you guys to kind of talk about the narrative, make it normal conversation in a professional way, but then dive deeper, literally, to figure out where people are and where they want to go.
Yeah. Stuart, how did that impact your curatorial approach to this show? You know, hearing all of that backstory, this kind of loaded, attempt of expanding how we think about butts and thinking about our lives and stigma. That must have been a hard thing to consider when curating a show.
I mean, the starting point obviously was Evan's practice, and we met, I think it was September of last year, and we talked about doing a project together. And I mean, I love buttholes. I'm sure everyone on this table loves buttholes. And so it worked perfectly for what I wanted to do. And it was actually quite a collaborative process in terms of who we wanted to work with, the artists we wanted to work with. I know Evan wanted to work with Brandon Herman and David Hockney, and I was happy to bring those on board. And I wanted to bring other people into the fold as well that potentially had to work with the Tom and Finland Foundation, because we wanted to have the Tom and Finland Foundation be very important. Today's Tom's birthday, so we wanted to put that into the fold. So for example, people like Brandon Herman, David Hockney, and they were important to add some weight and some playfulness to the exhibition. Yeah.
And what were the conversations like with artists like Ruben and Simon here, and asking them to be part of the show?
What were the conversations? That's a good question. So the first was obviously where we're approaching it and what we think about the butthole, and Evan gave these wonderful prompts. Some of them were responded to by artists. In fact, Ruben definitely has some of these prompts that he responded to yourself. But I wanted to take it slightly outside those specific prompts and talk about the body as a whole, and of course the Tom of Finland Foundation with being here and with Durk. So it became something a little bigger and a little different, and I think that added to the richness of the exhibition.
Mm-hmm. And what are your thoughts on the exhibition and being part of?
Well, I love the butt, but
Okay.
it was a starting point. But I'm enamored with the body, and it's at some point it attaches to the butt. So, so I decided to. It also represents people of color, and so my starting point was the butt, ended with the body, and then I also wanted to pay respect to Tom of Finland, so I did some collages with some Tom of Finland imagery, and then I did a person of color that it was just very intuitive. It's a collage. There are no buttholes, but if you look behind you, you'll find a butthole at some point. But
There's always an ass.
There's always an ass. But I thought, and there's actually some work in there by Florian
Hetz.
that has a beautiful butthole. I thought, I don't think I could top that butthole.
It's a really pretty
It's a
butthole.
beautiful butthole.
Really, like-
And so I thought I'm going to stick to the body.
Got it.
But that's where I am.
And that's
now.
a very hard butthole to make.
Really?
I try to make lots of assholes.
Is that your ideal
That-
butthole?
I think
Because that was my first question. Where did that butthole come from?
Right. I think that a lot of people come to me and they look at that picture and they go, I want that. I can't recreate that.
Why
It's just
not?
too perfect,
It's
unfortunately.
natural.
It's so natural.
Has it been touched?
But I think the nice thing about that to me is that may not be everybody's definition of perfection.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's kind of interesting when you're looking at the art that what you and I resonate with. Someone may say, oh my God, where's the hair? Where's those extra folds? I want the bloom. And what makes that is so interesting to me.
Yeah. Is perfection something that all of you think about, whether you're creating art or working with a patient? Because you mentioned with your art that you were really interested in making sure people of color were in there.
Yeah.
People of color, the perfect people of color body is going to be different than a white body, be different than other types of bodies. So
I do love a butthole, but do we really pay attention how pretty the butthole is? Because sometimes I like a butthole.
I made a whole career
But
out of people.
So the answer to that would be yes.
But I think this is where Durk comes in, because we've talked about a rosebud, right? Can we
Yes.
talk about
Yes.
that? We were going to have a rosebud show here, and I appreciate
Aesthetics.
So I love the idea of a little mangled butthole. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No.
Well, I don't hold that it's mangled. I hold
Okay.
that it's been exercised. And actually, I just want to make a comment in that Tom of Finland, the artist, he would say, yes, I draw very large cocks, but really I'm a butt man myself. And actually, I was thinking a little bit about just when I was in my early 20s is when I discovered what fisting was all about. I saw it on these videos that I would put at the penny arcade, quarters. I spent a lot of quarters, and I couldn't get enough of it. And then one day I actually experienced it, and then I went, well, my gosh, this is a whole another realm as far as the amount of nerves that are inside of us, and what happens, and it's very. It's like you get high from it. And I was high for 2 days after having someone put their hand up me. And where I'm going with that is that I really hold that gay men, and I use the word gay in a very pluralistic way, we're explorers. And I really feel like the butt has been a place of exploration and still is, ongoing. And we really don't know what its abilities, what its limits are. And it continues to sort of find new limits, and also that it has this amazing ability to contract itself again. And because I was told that, oh no, if you go there, you'll never come back. and maybe you'll never come back as far as desire, but your body is amazing how it will contract and pull itself back.
And what are those conversations like with your patients when they understand that their butt is, I guess, a more expansive place than they maybe realize?
Oh, in terms of like if you're loose or
Well, I'm sure
elastic
they come-
or stuff
well,
like
they're
that.
coming to you with injuries, and I know that you work with them to heal those, but also talk to them about care moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, it's looking just like you said. I'm totally fine with people going beyond capacity, but it's to understand the limits, and then also to understand what can you do to keep it from kind of tearing or getting
Right.
too loose or bringing it back. And I think that, just to speak to you, the fisting side of things is wonderful, and I'm so for everybody to explore that. The question comes down to is, well, what are you doing on the gym days, the other days that you're not fisting, to make sure that you're pulling everything back in, right? I think the sexual education, specifically in the United States, is awful, especially towards gay sex. And I think that's one of the huge components of what we're trying to do, is to teach people the different narratives. How do you prepare for fisting? How do you not hurt yourself by just even preparing for that? Then what's the right way to actually fist? And making sure that whoever is going to do that is actually seasoned and understands the right way to do it. So I think it's using the body as an instrument to dissect it in a gay sex way, where I, as the physician, are looking at it kind of physiologically and scientifically to say, okay, that's a little bit beyond boundary, or that's not, and how do we then get people there? I think there's a disconnect sometimes between here and there. People are so, especially with Tom's huge cocks, people want that. They want it in them right now, and to go from nothing to that is traumatic, right? And so how do we work towards people to get their desires, but also keep the expectations in the appropriate timing?
We had an evening here once where we did a round robin of like, what was the largest thing we each had up our anuses, and of course, many people said a drinking straw.
And it ended up with.
What was the biggest?
Oh, I mean, it all depends on how your ego is. Like, you could really say, well, I've taken, a double fist or something like that, whereas sometimes the winner is a drinking straw, just to blow it out of the water.
So you brought up a great point earlier, that is there a perfect butt, and what is kind of desire around kind of the aesthetic of a butt. So my question, I had a question, it just went away. Is that when you all as artists are thinking about desire and your own work, who is the audience you're making that for? Because Tom's work is so famous, but while many people do enjoy the bodies there, not everyone wants a muscled, hard body. So who is the audience that you're creating for? And Simon, I'd love to hear.
I feel like my audience is people who, like me, have felt repressed, which is a lot of people. And I want to... I try to get across some of the dirtier aspects, not dirtier, but less at least in my own mind what was more shameful. And glory holes for me are a major thing.
Oh, really?
I think they only have one here.
I know.
You need more.
Because I feel like there's an element of wrongness that's sort of baked into intimacy for me, because it's what I experienced growing up gay, and I actually want to display that, and I try to display in a really pretty way. So I like to take the perfection and the prettiness and stick something in that's psychologically a lot more difficult for me, because I feel like it's a sugar pill kind of.
And does it help you with your own shame around sex?
Oh, definitely. And part of that too is I'm exhibitionistic in my work, because it's a tendency I have anyway, and if I put it out there, like the drawings here are self-portraits, for me that immediately took away a lot of general fear that I have, just internalized homophobia or discomfort that is still with me, even though I'm getting into my later 30s, and so I'm it's stuck with me.
Gotcha. Ruben, do you have a similar experience with your own art? Has it been a space for you to kind of deal with your own issues around sex or your body or history?
Well, the particular work that's here, it's about I come from the world of print, because as a struggling artist I had to go to the commercial side. And so I was a big fan of blue magazines, porn magazines. And so I collected those. And I jerked off to those, because I'm a gentleman of a certain age, so I grew up in the late 70s and 80s. That was our go-to when we were kids, right, or when we were growing up. And so I still have an affinity for print, and so I'm using that as my takeoff point for this particular work. It's collage work with using, blue media to create these images. I didn't grow up with a lot of shame. I was raised by a lesbian mother.
That's amazing.
so and I actually, some of my first bars were gay bars with my mother, and so there was not a lot of shame. So I don't know. I was been hanging around with faggots. Yeah, I know. So I don't know. And so whatever restrictions come to me, they're self-imposed. It's nothing that are deep in me.
Yeah. And speaking of restrictions, Stuart, your work, one of the works you're showing today is I always forget the name of it, Ouroboros.
Ouroboros, yes.
Yes, which shows like the body very unrestricted. So tell us about your work in the show and how you're kind of showing how a body can be pushed further.
Sure. So the Ouroboros that I did, the Ouroboros is an ancient Egyptian symbol, and it's a serpent or a snake eating its own tail. And it's a symbol meaning eternal life and the changing of the seasons. And I was asked to make this sculptural piece of this guy sucking his own dick. And at first I kind of balked at the idea. I thought, well, that's too sexual. I don't make that kind of work.
But were you secretly turned on by it?
But when I came along the idea of the Ouroboros, it made perfect sense to me. And what I liked about it is the final figure has this connection. So he's completely connected and completely in touch with his own physicality, his own body. And because of the material, it's in stainless steel, it's mirror polished, it has this perfection to it as well. So we had this combination of the perfection, but also the connectivity and the knowledge of the body, and I think it's something that we're all striving for, is our own understanding of our own bodies and what we can do with our own bodies. I mean, of course, we've all tried to suck our own dicks at one point. I think the last time I was able to do it was maybe when I was 17.
Were you able to do it?
I mean, let's just say the tip.
We can all do the tip, right?
It's always just the tip. But I mean, we've tried to do it.
Yeah.
So there was perfection and ideas about just knowledge of our own body within that work.
Got it.
But we also did that in stainless steel because
is
we
important.
wanted the surgical side.
Exactly.
And that was
love
why we had chosen that
The
to do
material,
that. And I think it really, actually, from a distance, you can't really, it's so shiny that you can't really
I
see.
agree, yeah.
And then finally, when you go there, it really kind of, the facade comes in. Whoa, this is pretty
Exactly. It
amazing.
gives it more of an
It
abstract
gives it another
nature.
dimension.
Yeah, I
It
agree.
really
Very
worked out
much
great.
so.
It's one
That's
of
a
those
nice
happy
reveal.
accidents.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Are people? I know that work's become pretty popular. And are people aroused when they look at it? Do they communicate being desirable of that?
Yeah, definitely. I think people are aroused by it. I when I make my work, I'm not necessarily interested in myself being aroused whilst producing it or making others sexually aroused. But if that's a reaction to the work, then that's a reaction to the work, and that's 100% valid reaction.
Gotcha. And do you all think that one should be aroused when they're making their own work? You know, Tom, I think, said that if he wasn't aroused or hard when he was drawing, that the work wasn't good.
Right. And so if you really understand what that means, is that when we're aroused, our senses are heightened. And so our whole perception and how we see things and feel things are that much more heightened and precise. And so that's what he was. And he could, of course, do work without that, but he was open and honest enough to admit that and to really sort of use that as something that he would really try to produce for himself.
Yeah.
So he had to create his own world, his own environment in order for that to take place.
I think it would be impossible to create artwork while you're being aroused. I think maybe pre and post, because I'm doing a body of work right now where I actually come all over my work, but during it I'm working. Don't bother me, I'm on all cylinders. So after the fact or pre, post, but not, I don't think
You don't want to be like hard, like walking around painting or.
Well, I mean, you could, but I think the work's going to be sloppy unless I don't know. It's like, what are your thoughts?
I do get aroused when I can't stay hard the whole time because it takes forever. But
because the drawings are long.
But like I actually like the energy. I mean, the libido can be transferred into creativity also, and so if I'm gonna jack off after working, it has to be afterward. It's not during, because I don't want to get rid of that energy.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of drawings of like anonymous penises too, which I love that, and I get to study it forever. So like,
how do you get anonymous penises?
I have a phone number scratched on the wall here, and I also have started to get them just DM'd to me all the time.
That's amazing.
I get them a lot.
It is interesting how
But
when
it's
I show
always-
it to people, how interested they are in, and many write down that number.
It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's changed my whole way of operating.
So the reference is based on original material that you get. You don't
Yeah.
look to a magazine or anything like that.
No, it's all original because I like that. I like the interplay, and again with the intimacy, there's an element of complete disconnection, but there's also like a search for connection, and I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And do you feel like there's a stronger search for connection if the person knows it's real instead of just something they fantasized over?
I don't know. I mean, I think the fantasy is just as powerful, but I do like the idea of taking. Dick pics are kind of goofy. If you watch somebody take a dick pic, it's a goofy act, and they're also sort of, they can be currency in a way, and they're kind of throwaways. And if I'm putting them down and taking my time and like kind of venerating them, I am giving the penis the honor I think that it should have.
Do you ever paint or draw one that you don't like?
Yeah, I'll still do that. I mean, I like all of them.
Would you go and draw a penis because you love the person's personality, but their penis is not that sexy?
I actually don't love knowing who it is.
Okay.
I think the anonymity is kind of important to me, unless it's myself, and then it's about this, like, then it's about the exhibition. So it's like either voyeuristic or exhibitionistic.
Which is an interesting part of taking and, objectifying a body part. And I really think about buttholes as being the alternate lips. So you can be necking with somebody on either end, and they're both very expressive, and so it's and so that's sort of, I find, to be rather beautiful.
Yeah.
A French kissing a butthole is
It's
the
great.
ultimate, is the best, right?
Definitely.
Well, I mean, it can be a French kiss because you're not really getting it.
Yeah, because it's not a
butthole.
yeah. Unless there's a
The
tongue
psychology
that's
is there.
Yeah, it's like a half French kiss.
Yeah.
It's a half French kiss.
Especially if you're blooming a little bit.
Oh, blooming, there you go.
Which is what you like.
Yeah.
Yes, we like that.
So I'd love to pivot into, I love this idea of like real versus fantasy, and that you're using real images that people are taking that are anonymous, but they are based on a real thing. Dr. Goldstein, I'd love to hear what images people are bringing to you when they're wanting to create the reality of a fantasy they have.
Yeah, I think most of it is the injured ask, so I'll get the DMs of, hey, what's this, or I want this off.
Wow. In your Instagram?
Oh, all the time. It's
Wow. So I want your Instagram, not yours.
I think that's like a separate art exhibition.
Yes, in conversation. Yeah.
I said to Stuart, I was like, maybe we should do this, curate this, and he's like, no.
The injured butt.
Yeah, I get the gamut of everything, I think the key for me is to understand people's expectations, and because I'm doing plastic surgery and because I'm doing reconstruction, and that's when we were writing this piece also, it was more of what my preconceived notions of desire and perfection doesn't really matter. Unless obviously someone asks me, I'll offer this is what I like and what I prefer. But it's like going to the barbershop and kind of choosing. You may have the buzz cut or the long hair. It just depends on what you want. But yeah, it's super interesting. I think similar to what you're doing, you're connecting with someone even before you even actually know who they are. I don't know if you ever meet them.
Not
really. For the most part. Most of the time I do meet, so you're able to kind of put and see and kind of be inquisitive to people's lives and try and figure out where they want to go. the aesthetics is one piece, but I need to know what they're into. If they are into big dicks, if they're into foreign objects, how they are expressing. People love to bloom. If they're coming to me with some problems that I need to do surgery, how do I not get rid of the bloom that they want because they love that, but yet I still need to take care of their ass because they're bleeding, right? So it's like it's a fine balance. I think as we all age, you kind of come into your own sexuality where you're able to ask the right questions and really gauge where someone is on the scale of everything, which makes that more interesting.
Yeah.
Because an ass is an ass. I could fix it. I can make it look whatever they want. But it's kind of the person behind the ass, and then to make sure that I get the outcome that's mirrors who they are.
This sounds like an incredibly intimate process for both the patient and yourself. Do you find yourself creating a very intimate relationship with them as you go through this process?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, there's people that are just like, fix my ass, Evan, and let me get back to what I want. And then there's the majority that, that are able to take away the taboo, take away the internalized homophobia, where if it's a 40-minute visit, probably 20 minutes is on ass and what we want, and then the other is just like having fun and talking about things that nobody was able to express, which I think is really great to kind of, just like this house, you really just open your arms to everybody, and then they're able to kind of lose their own inhibitions and really start talking about things that matter. And when people walk away from the visit, it's the interesting part is that they're like, why can't we talk like this all the time? Or like, why can't we have conversations in a roundtable discussion about what we're all going through, specifically as gay men, which I think is awesome.
And were you hoping that this exhibition would be a place where people could have those conversations like we're having?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think that and as we walk around tonight and we'll see what people's definitions are, of that. And it's like, some of your work, people love cut, some people love uncut. What does that mean? What does that evoke? And the glory hole is such an interesting, in and of itself.
Just the word.
Just the word. Right? Just the word. But I think that, you're right, it was this anonymous kind of, but now on the other side, it's part of people's desire, and like drives people that like, I don't want to know who's on the other side. Like, it's my own inner, being of who I think that is, which is how you draw a lot, which is kind of, which I think is so interesting, I wonder who that guy is.
Another thing, which is, I'm the oldest one here at the table, and I just want to state that I feel like sexuality, when I'm going to be 70 this year, and so each decade produces its own new reality on that you can still continue to be sexual in your nature and explore. And I feel like gay men have been, again, those explorers who are willing not to give up and not to end the search for pleasure and for self-discovery.
Totally. And I see a bimodal distribution of bottoms. I see the 20 to 40-year-old, and then I see the 55 to 75. And it's interesting, if you listen to the narrative, a lot of times there's erectile dysfunction that sets in, their partner unfortunately passes away or something like that, where now they have to go back into the dating world. And what is determined before of like top versus bottom, it now becomes a different realm. And so it's so interesting where I'm actually still teaching a 65-year-old man the actual right way to bottom, because he wants this relationship that's working, and he needs to kind of be a part of that, which I think is also really super interesting. Because you're right, it doesn't stop. And we should have safe havens for people to explore in each decade, wherever it rolls. I was just saying how I think it was just so unbelievably amazing that Tom was able to achieve everything that he had done artistically at that time, especially to this kind of polar opposite of where society was at that time.
And that it was really a word that really depicts what he wanted to communicate, was to indulge, to pleasure yourself, to really sort of allow yourself to enjoy sexuality and participating in it.
It's pretty amazing. Did he participate in it?
Yes, the thing is that oftentimes artists are somewhat reclusive in
Yeah.
that, but I'll tell you, his 60s were, that was the whole era when I was in his life, and he had a lot of fun. More fun than I've had in my 60s. And he really, he stayed open and indulged, and yet he was he drew every day and was very sort of, very strong about just doing that. But he didn't short himself on indulging in pleasures and all of the hedonistic things that are available to us.
Was he communicative of it?
Yes, as far as himself?
Yeah, or just, a lot of artists are the reclusive. They may partake, but the discussions of kind of...
the thing is that this house is really a reflection of what happened then, because he had such close friendships here, and we were all having fun together, and so we would go out together, and we would take care of each other together. The whole idea of actually making sure that each of your friends make sure that they have a good time is really sort of part of the ethos of what this house represents, and also what was representative during his era here.
Oh, that's great.
And what's it been like keeping this house open to the public as the world has changed so much around it?
The thing is that it's so simple in that it's just, we have a few guideline rules, and really it's about letting people just enjoy themselves, and sometimes I wonder if the house itself is its own entity, because it almost not demands, but it seems to really request having lots of people come here at different times, and so that there's always energy, and it seems like people go away with energy here, and yet they give energy, so it's sort of an amazing experience for being here, just witnessing it, and I'll continue to witness until I'm not here.
That's great.
And Stuart, what was it like using that that energy to create the show? You had to think about the space in which the work was being shown when you're thinking about this topic.
It definitely informed the exhibition. I did an artist residency here. That was my first experience in 2014, I think it was, and I spent 7 or 8 months here. It was supposed to be 3 months, but I had a great time, so I spent more time here.
You're taking a lot of energy.
Exactly. And Durk is absolutely right about the energy. The energy. And actually, one thing he said to me at the beginning was, you can give as much of the house as you want, and you can take as much as from the house as you want. But it does give you so much energy. The people that you encounter every day, the house is so busy, people coming and going, that it feeds into what your practice is and into the exhibition as well. So, which is why I wanted to incorporate, obviously, some of the artists which are already within the Tom of Finland collection, and some of the artists that aren't. And I think that energy is really important for younger artists as well, which is why young artists are involved in the show. And yeah, we just need to continue with that energy, and with people coming to the house, people experiencing the house, people experiencing exhibitions like the one we're doing this evening, because that's going to take you to the future.
I think the titling of the exhibition is very, I love it, because it really speaks exactly to what it is, and you can actually interpret it any which way you want, because I think of it, when I hear the body is the instrument, I think of like a cello or a violin, and how playing your body, and how all these different artists are expressing that through a depiction through their art.
Yeah. Okay, so last fun questions. Is there a perfect butt?
Well, it's
Wait, hold on.
I'm sorry. Well, it's subjective,
Hold on,
right?
hold on.
Yeah.
It's subjective, but I think we do need some shape.
Yes.
It could be brown, it could be
It can't
white.
be flat?
Yeah. Well, some people like a flat butt. If it's the thing is,
You can get further in if it's a flat butt.
Bruce.
Wait, what does that mean?
Well, if it's too much of a bubble, you can't. Your whole face can't get as far in. But if it's
Well, that's
flat,
part of the fun.
Well, I know, it depends on what you want. Depends on how far you want
Stretch
to
that
go.
tongue.
Because I've been, 'cause it depends on what you like aesthetically, right? I like the beautiful face and a pretty sexy body. And if there's a flat butt or a small dick, it's okay because I'm getting such satisfaction from the other thing.
Face.
Yeah.
Bruce posted something this morning, something about, I forgot the actor's name, but he has a small dick, but I don't care. I said, yeah, I don't care that he has a small dick, but there's also fisting. You know what I mean? So, but I'm saying, so it's what I mean. But there are some people that fetishize and they're enamored with the butt, which is fine. But in my particular case, I do like a butt. But if it's attached to something else, that's
It's just as
more
good.
It's just as good.
Body. Do you have people asking you what the perfect butt looks like?
Yeah, I think again we spoke about that definition, like you said, is different for everybody. What's a perfect butt to me? The picture that Florian took
Florian heads, yeah.
is pretty
quite
amazing.
beautiful.
I mean, I think though that to me defines youth as well. And so when I look at something like that, it's the, especially in the gay world, it's everybody's goal is youth. And it's kind of interesting, especially as you talk about from aging, and I find that that's so interesting of where that world is, right? To stay young forever. I am so particular, unfortunately. I am like,
Personally, you're very
personally
particular?
particular.
Well, that's why you went into that.
That's
profession.
it.
You're very anal about anal.
But I'm very anal about anal. It's hairless to me is like the best.
you used to buy the Florian.
Like I need to buy the Florian. The ethnicity of things I really like. It is perfect for my office. But no, I think it
Give commissioning work.
Are we selling?
I have some great
Paddle
pieces
8
there
is here.
already. Absolutely, it's perfect. I actually think I'm going to take that piece and don't tell Florian. I'm going to actually make a clock out of it. And I think that especially
I think we have to talk to the artist first.
I wanted to take that.
I feel like Florian should have a say in
I
that.
wanted to make a clock, but I saw
You
that
can commission him to do that.
you could put a clock. You could put a clock on the
not our dealer.
glass.
Yes.
You could put a clock on the glass. I thought that would be quite nice. Perfect.
Oh my god. Durk, is there a perfect butt for you?
I think it's so subjective, and it's really whatever one. For me, it's really in the moment when I'm turned on and I'm desiring someone. There it is.
Yeah.
It's perfect then.
Yeah.
Agreed. Simon?
I agree. It's
Same.
personal, but
Personal.
I like strong. I like if you can see some muscle.
Ooh. Hey.
I like the way all the butts that Tom draws are kind of perfect.
They're so
butts.
The perky.
for
The
example,
best top
right here,
part.
the
Yeah,
dimples.
That's what
Yeah.
I like.
I mean, I have to say the same. I mean, of course, it's down to the moment, but that is quite beautiful. And a little bit of hair is okay, but if I'm going to be putting my tongue in there for half an
You
hour,
had to think about what you're putting in there. He's like, what was the thing?
Yeah, if I'm putting my tongue in there for half an hour, I want to know that it's
half an hour.
well,
Wow.
depends on the.
We
evening.
know-
Thinking.
Okay.
We know from your Instagram feed what you like.
Wow.
There you go.
Folks,
That
that
answers
was
the
it for today. Oh my god. Well, thank you all so much for spending this time, and I really enjoyed this conversation. So
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
you.
And thanks to Durk and Tom of Finland and Stuart and everybody. I think it's an awesome event tonight.
Yeah.
Well,
Good.
thank
Thank
you.
you, Evan.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Awesome.